Hey guys, it's Izzy, and I am back with my review of the action that took place in this last weekend. But before we get to that, please, if you do not mind, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you're going to enjoy this video, and hit that like button to let YouTube know that you and everybody else will enjoy this content. But we go ahead and get started at Molineux, where Wolves took on Liverpool. I had predicted this game to be a 2-0 victory for Liverpool, and it ended up being a 3-1 victory. Now, the reason why I thought that Liverpool were going to overpower Wolves is simply because Wolves have a problem putting the ball into the net. On the other hand, Liverpool, who have been buoyed by a bunch of good performances recently, most notably that Newcastle comeback and most recently the Aston Villa domination, Liverpool have been looking very good. Liverpool were very sketchy in that first half. They did not impose themselves whatsoever, and Wolves caught them cold with a bunch of counterattacks that could have led to them being down at least 2 or 3 goals by the time it got to halftime. But the Liverpool that we know showed up. In the second half, Jurgen Klopp probably put his teeth into somebody, and guess what ended up happening? A very stirring comeback. Started off by Gakpo, who was substituted a little bit after that, but he did not seem too angry at what had happened. He probably had a conversation with Jurgen Klopp at some point, and maybe his performance in the first half was not really up to par. But eventually Liverpool did overpower Wolves. I did feel as though Wolves probably should have tried to retain some more energy into the second half, and maybe they could have made a more compelling argument as to why they deserved to win the game. But all's well that ends well for Liverpool. They were the better of the two sides over the 90 minutes, and definitely in the second half, they were by far the most dominant. They switched to a more 4-2-4 formation where they just overloaded Wolves with attacking quality, and with what they have to bring off the bench, you cannot argue too much as far as what Liverpool deserved in this game. So a 3-1 victory, and that's what ended up happening. Next up, we had Fulham against Luton Town, a game that I predicted to be a 2-0 victory to Fulham, and as it came to pass, it was a 1-0 victory to Fulham. Now, Fulham is one of those sides that's just going to be a comfortable mid-table side, kind of like they were last season. But as far as Luton Town, I have been saying for a while, and a lot of other pundits and fans alike have been worried about Luton, simply because they looked undercooked, and they still look undercooked for the league. And some people have been comparing them to a potential Derby County side from 2007, 2008, as far as how many points they can achieve over the whole season. And I really want Luton to do well. I like the fact that you have a team that's coming up with such a wonderful story, climbing up all 4 tiers of the English league and making it all the way to the top. And mainly just for the fact that you have a new name in the league, and you'd want them to be able to try and establish themselves there. But I don't see that happening. It's going to be an extremely tough season for Luton, and Fulham, they just keep ticking on. They've had a few good performances this season, the 10-man performance against Arsenal, and a couple of very good victories. And Marco Silva, who had for a while looked as though he might go to Saudi Arabia and is without Mitrovic, he's doing well, and happy for them that they were able to keep Paulinho, because he's a very important cog in their team. He makes them very defensively solid, and he just knows how to be in the right place at the right time. But as far as Luton, they're going to need to do something in January, because I can feasibly see them not getting a lot of points up until January. So it's going to be a tough ride for them. And then on to Tottenham against Sheffield United, a game that I predicted to be a 3-1 victory for Tottenham. But as it came to pass, it was a very narrow, late 2-1 comeback victory for Tottenham. Now, Tottenham have previous in this. I think if you go back into the archives much recently, you can remember them coming back from 2-1 down against Leicester City, I believe, and it was two late Steven Bergwijn goals, one that was right at the death, much similar to this. So funny thing about history, I always keep telling you guys, history will repeat itself. And in this game, it was no different. Sheffield United, in my opinion, for their defensive action and for the fact that they led 1-0 from the 74th minute, I felt so bad for them not winning this game. The added time is going to have a very big effect on the league. We saw it against Manchester United and Arsenal. We saw it come against Sheffield United in this game. Added time is going to have a big impact in this game. It was very heartbreaking to see, the Sheffield United team trudge off the field after such a good performance as far as their defensive nous goes, and then they ended up losing the game 2-1. A lot has been said about Richarlison and his mental health and the fact that he has gotten help for it. And it's good that he did, because you can see him progressively get better in this game. And he came on and saved them. He absolutely came on and did what he needed to do. As far as Sheffield United, this game shows me a little bit more about them, and I am more confident in their abilities to try and stave off relegation. They almost won the game against Everton a little while ago, and if it wasn't for those two Jordan Pickford saves, they could have run out 3-2 winners. So I think that Sheffield United I think they have some fight in them. I am now going to probably bump them up a little bit as far as my expectations for them. And I think they can fight off relegation. I'm not going to say they're going to escape it, but I do think that they will do a whole lot better than I thought they were going to do at the start of the season. And maybe they just need that first victory to get them going. And they have admittedly faced some tough teams so far in the start. They've had Manchester City. And so maybe once they get to a nice run of fixtures, they will be able to take advantage of that. Speaking of Manchester City, they took on West Ham at the West Ham Stadium. The game ended 3-1. My prediction for this game was 2-1. That being said, I thought that West Ham tried their best in the first half. They came out with the most predictable way of attacking Manchester City, which is the only way most teams are going to be able to get anything from them, and that is counterattacking. And James Ward-Prowse, he has been a phenomenal signing for West Ham so far. And I think for the remainder of the season, he will do very well for them. West Ham seem to be very good at set pieces, and they will only get better as a result of signing him. They did have the opportunity to cause Manchester City more problems. I think the game when it was 1-1, there was an opportunity for Antonio to have made it 2-1. They also had that header that Ederson saved from the corner kick. So West Ham did put their best foot forward, but as it is with Manchester City, they just know how to get the job done. I don't think they played particularly well in this game. That being said, Doku gets his first goal, and you can tell that he's going to be a handful for Premier League defenses. It's not going to be very easy to defend against him. He seems like a very good replacement on that side. I think Grealish is injured at the moment. But as it goes, man, Manchester City are going to be Manchester City, and it's going to take a lot for somebody to break them down this season. It's going to take a lot. I can easily see them going 5 or 6, 7, 8 wins on the bounce, but they do have to face Arsenal soon, and that's going to be their first test away from home as far as a big test. And then we have Manchester United against Brighton, a game that Manchester United were definitely not looking forward to. If there's somebody you don't want to face when you are having a crisis or when you are having a very tense moment in your season, it is Brighton, because Brighton do not care. They do not care. And they went to Old Trafford and did to Manchester United what they did to Arsenal last season and what they did to Liverpool at the MX. They ran out 3-1 winners, a game that I predicted would be a 2-3 victory for Brighton. And the reason being is Brighton are just one of the best teams in the league right now. Manchester United were not going to scrape a victory the same way they did against Wolves, because Brighton are that much better than Man United. Brighton, in my opinion, are the third or fourth best team in the league as far as managerial acumen and as far as squad quality, simply because of how he aligns his team. Now, they might not have the best pieces compared to an Arsenal or a Manchester City or even Manchester United. If you take their individual players and you line them up against Man United, they might not shape up as the most sexy of names. But the way they line up and the confidence that they went into this game and played against Manchester United it was phenomenal. There were moments of that game that I was left gasping at how good they are. if you watched my review on Saturday, I seemed a little bit subdued. And the main reason was because I just could not believe what I was watching. When I was trying to reach for words to describe Brighton, I was amazed. I couldn't find the words to put into place because I have not seen a team play this well against the top sides on a consistent basis for a while. I do remember, I think it was in the 2005-2006 season when Middlesbrough seemed to be able to beat all of the top sides. I do recall them beating Arsenal at the Riverside Stadium. I remember them beating Manchester United 4-1 at the Riverside as well. And I believe they inflicted a 3-0 defeat on Chelsea. You might have to check the records for that. But I do remember Middlesbrough being so good against the top sides in that particular season. But Brighton are good against the top sides now in multiple seasons. They did it against Graham Potter when he was able to achieve victories against Manchester City and against Arsenal. And then post Potter, they had De Zerbi, and he has managed to just trounce most of the big teams. This is a man who's beaten Chelsea 4-1. This is a man who has beaten Manchester United on multiple occasions now. He has beaten Arsenal on multiple occasions. So it's great to see what Brighton are doing. And then to Manchester United. They're in deep crisis. The Glazers have no footing with the fans whatsoever. Everybody wants them out as far as Man United are concerned. Ten Hag looks bereft of ideas. He looked sad, confused, dejected, tired at the end of the game, and maybe dealing with all the mental hurdles that he has to pass through when he is dealing with players such as Sancho and dealing with the Mason Greenwood issue and then having to deal with the Maguire issue. A lot is coming out of Manchester United, and this is probably going to be the nadir of their Premier League era. This is going to be the lowest point of their Premier League era because management is not working out. Ownership is not working out. The playing squad, while they are talented, and you have your players such as Fernandes and you have players such as Rashford, it's just not working out for them. So they're going to need to do something, and they're going to need to do something very quick because they still haven't faced Liverpool. They still haven't faced Manchester United. And if Liverpool and Manchester City have anything to say about that, they will want to embarrass them. And Jurgen Klopp never seems to hold back whenever he faces Manchester United. That man understands what it is to be a Liverpool manager. And the same way Pep Guardiola understands what it means to be a Manchester City manager. And they understand the importance of the fixtures against Man United. So if the embarrassment was bad enough against Brighton, it might be worse when they face their two most hated rivals. Thereafter, we have Aston Villa against Crystal Palace. In a game that I predicted Aston Villa to win 2-0, it came to pass that they won 3-1. And much like Tottenham, although in much more comfortable fashion, they decided to come back from behind. They were losing 1-0 up until right around the 80th minute, and they were able to come back and win the game 3-1. A penalty aided them in this run, and it was just desserts. I was pretty sure that Aston Villa were going to show up in this game. They have a very good home record against Crystal Palace, and also they probably needed to do something different from what they did when they faced Liverpool away from home recently. And of course, Liverpool will do that to anybody. They will make a mockery of a good side when they go to Anfield. But Aston Villa were very tepid in that game. They were very timid. They did not approach Liverpool with any semblance of strong attacking threat. And so I wasn't too surprised that they got beaten pretty badly in the end. Although in that game, I think I had predicted Aston Villa to get a draw, which, Liverpool will make a mockery of that whenever they come out. But Crystal Palace are usually very good defensively, and they were good in this game for large parts. And I think just right at the end, the game turned on its head. Aston Villa playing at home, you're going to need to show a lot more than what they did at Anfield. So I can't say too much about Villa other than that they have the quality and they have a very good manager, and they are a good side. They will also feel more buoyed by the fact that they are going to have some more players coming back. I know they have Mings out of the side. They've had Buendia out of the side, but a lot of the new signings are starting to bed in a little bit better. We're going to see a lot more of Tielemans. So overall, good stuff for Villa. They should be gunning for at least the Europa League spot because I think they're good enough to achieve that. They're going to have stiff competition from your Brentfords, stiff competition from Brighton, who I still think are a Champions League side, but I think Aston Villa will do well. As far as Crystal Palace, they have made a very good start to the season, so this loss shouldn't be too hard on them. And if you are a loss benefit calculator, you would realize that in this game, you probably didn't stand much of a chance based off of your history, and they probably looked at it as a free hit. However, Crystal Palace being a mid-table side and Aston Villa being closer to mid-table, these are those games that if I was a manager, I would look at as a 6-pointer. So you want to get the better of a team that you think you're on par with. And then usually the free hits are the teams that you face at the top. And then our late Saturday game was Newcastle taking on Brentford, a game that ended 1-0 to Newcastle. My prediction was a 2-1 victory to Newcastle. And the reason why I thought that is because coming back to St. James's Park, of course, sparked by the great St. James's Park crowd, Newcastle had to do something. Brentford were probably good for a point in this game, and it was decided ultimately by a Callum Wilson penalty. I think Newcastle are going to eventually get back to more of the Newcastle that we knew. They have had a very difficult start to the season. I mean, you have to cut them some slack that they faced Liverpool, they faced Manchester City, they faced Brighton, 3 teams that are undoubtedly going to be in the top 5. I'm going to call it now. That's probably teams that are going to be in the top 5. So admittedly, it was going to be a very hard start for them. And Brentford itself was not an easy game, despite being at home. So it's good for them to get back to winning ways, inject a little bit more confidence in the team, especially before a Champions League week. They did get battered at AC Milan yesterday, but you can't blame them. It's their first Champions League game in over 20 years. So you got to cut them some slack when it comes to that. But as far as this game was concerned, the ebb and flow pretty much fell towards Newcastle. Although it was a back and forth game, Brentford could have easily gotten a point out of them. And I know Thomas Frank was not too happy about some decisions that went against Brentford, but both sides will be fine. As I say, Brentford should be a team that's, about 8th, 9th, 10th, somewhere in that range. Newcastle are definitely going to have to improve a little bit on what they've been doing so far. But all's well that ends well. I think now they can go on a nice little run, especially since they have a good run of fixtures that they should be able to win. And then the game that I've been waiting to talk to you people about, Bournemouth against Newcastle. Now, I had predicted 10 games this week, and I had gotten 9 of them largely correct. No correct score lines, but largely correct. And it just happened to be Bournemouth against Chelsea as the only game that I didn't get right. Now, I had already made a review of the Bournemouth and Chelsea game, and I decided to scrap it because it was going to come out a little bit too late. But one of the things I was trying to talk about in that review was the fact that this is not the Chelsea squad of Jose Mourinho. This is not the Chelsea squad of Antonio Conte, and this is definitely not the squad that Thomas Tuchel took over. And I need to stop thinking of Chelsea as that team, because Chelsea are where they really are, and they are just a mid-table side with a mishmash of very talented players, but they are not a team. They are a squad, but they are not a team. And I keep thinking of Chelsea as a throwback of the great teams that they've had over the last few years. And one of the things that I need to understand is that they are not that team anymore. Now, all that being said, this game had its moments, and either side could have won it, honestly. Maybe Bournemouth a little bit more towards the end. Chelsea hit the post a few times. Chelsea are a pale shadow of who they used to be. They and Manchester United are right next to each other on the table, and it makes sense that they are right next to each other on the table because both of them are playing very poorly. Both of them have ownership management issues. A lot of them have issues that go beyond what we probably are exposed to through the media or through whatever the spokespeople are putting out. But Chelsea has an even more interesting layer of problems in that the manager is still trying to figure out his best squad because he's new. A lot of those players are new, and even more so, a lot of those players might not end up cutting it for Chelsea. And it's going to take at least 2 years before we get to see anything close to the Chelsea that we would think we're supposed to see. I don't see them fighting for top 4 whatsoever. I even see them not fighting for top 6 because I do think that there are definitely 6 or 7 better sides than Chelsea this season. But yeah, I need to stop thinking of Chelsea as the old team that they were. And maybe if I start considering them as the team that they are right now, I would have probably seen that they were bound to lose this game or draw this game. I had them winning 2-1. They were anything but, although they had their moments. This is not the Chelsea that we used to know. And then a smile on my face as Arsenal win 1-0 at Goodison Park. My prediction for this game was a 2-1 victory to Arsenal. It ended up being 1-0. Arsenal break their Goodison Park hoodoo, hoodoo that's been over our heads for the last 6 years or so. Now, this game was complete dominance from Arsenal. And the fact that they only won it by 1 goal, it shouldn't be worrying. But a team like Manchester City would have won this game about 3 or 4-0 because they would show their dominance through the scoreline. Arsenal are ticking on just well. I think that the midfield is starting to come to its own as far as Declan Rice and his understanding with Odegaard and Declan Rice's understanding with his back four is concerned. We saw Fabio Vieira come into the squad this week, and that was one of my predictions on Friday. I thought that Mikel Arteta will take Havertz out of the firing line because Goodison Park is one of those places where you just don't want a player who's still trying to find his feet. It was quite possible that Trossard or maybe feasibly Fabio Vieira or Nelson was going to play in that 8. Havertz is going to find his feet, and I still do have that video that's supposed to come out. Unfortunately, YouTube has blocked it based off of copyright, so I'm going to have to redo a few things on it. But I think Havertz is a good player, and eventually he will find his feet under Mikel Arteta. As far as Everton are concerned, we can't say too much about them. They're just woeful. And they are going to either need to make a managerial change or they're going to have a very good January transfer window. And with the fact that they are possibly going to be bought out by a Miami-based group, we don't know where Everton is going for the rest of the season. They might have a good upturn somewhere. I just don't see it. I do believe Everton are firmly going to be in the bottom 5. It's just a question of whether they're going to be able to escape the trap door again. And then finally, we had Nottingham Forest taking on Burnley on Monday, a game that I predicted to end 2-2. And as it came to pass, it ended 1-1. Now, Nottingham Forest were a team that I expected to be counterattacking in this game. I expected Burnley to be able to play their free-flowing football and for Vincent Kompany to try and showcase what he's able to do. And I think it largely played out that way. Nottingham Forest tended to do well on the counterattack. This game was punctuated by really good goals, not to mention Callum Hudson-Odoi's goal. That goal was phenomenal. It was a beautiful goal. And it's nice to see him being able to get some game time because Chelsea seemed to have had a plan for him for a long time. They prevented him from going to Bayern Munich a few years ago. I think Dortmund wanted to buy him a few years ago. And for some reason, they just kept him there. And to see him go on loan right now to Nottingham Forest might be a little bit of a downer because I think he's an immensely talented player and maybe Chelsea should have let him go earlier to be able to fulfill his talent. But hopefully he will be able to do that at Nottingham Forest now. And as far as this game goes, Burnley could have won it towards the end, barred for that offside goal. But both of them are going to keep ticking on. I really like Nottingham Forest. I really like what they're able to do. I really want them to survive. And maybe I just like to see that great name of Nottingham Forest right back in the Premier League. They have a great history when it comes to English football with the Cloughy years and with what they were able to do in the 80s and the late 70s. So it's nice to see them back. And I hope long live Nottingham Forest in the Premier League. It's a good thing to see them. But that rounds up my reviews of the games this weekend. What did you think? Manchester United, let me know about their crisis. What do you think about Chelsea? What do you think about Arsenal and Liverpool and Manchester City, as that is a 3-way fight for the title at the moment? Tottenham might be somewhere in there, but we know it's not gonna last. Other than that, thank you for watching. If you want to go down there and hit that subscribe button, please go ahead and do that and hit that like button. Let YouTube know that you are enjoying this content so that everybody else can be able to enjoy it as well. It's been your boy Izzy. I will catch you on the next one. Peace.